feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Friday morning. It's February 28th after the Wolves 102-111 loss in LA on Thursday night against the Lakers. The plan for today is pretty simple. Some takeaways from the loss, and then kind of a look back at this week. Lots happened this week, but it has only been 1 week since 7 days ago. They were on All-Star break. So we'll kind of look at week one post All-Star. It is Friday morning, so that means I'm joined by Kyle Theige. What's up, Kyle?
What's up, man? Another day, another podcast, another moment where I was kind of telling you this before we hit record that like 60 games now. This is pretty much like last night felt like the last game or play of the third quarter of the season, and now you wake up today, there's 22 games left. You've slipped to 8th in the standings.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. And you basically have the fourth quarter left. And we saw this again last night. We can talk about it a little bit. We obviously saw it in the brightest moment against the Thunder. But this team, when you think they're out and done, they just form these crazy comebacks. And I'm curious, and we'll kind of get into it today, if they can do that over the fourth quarter of the season, because I watched that game.
They dug themselves a hole.
Yep, because they've dug and last night, and for a multitude of reasons, whether it be the guys they played, the guys that weren't available, their actions on the court, whatever. That was a really bad performance. Like, they've just gotten punked now. I think both times they've showed up to LA, we were there when they started this season, and then again last night, just not a lot of energy. And it's cool to see them fight back. That Thunder game to me was the most enjoyable moment of the season, but how often can you keep finding success after shooting yourself in the foot? You know what I mean? And last night they did it again and they lost, and now you wake up today and you've slid a spot in the standings. So I don't know where you want to go with it, but I think we should probably start with like the officiating and Ant and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, 60 games in is where Ant picked up his 16th technical of the season, which means he's averaged a technical about once every 4 games thus far this season. 16 technicals means you're suspended. He'll be suspended for tonight's game against Utah, barring some sort of like it getting rescinded. I don't know. We're recording this on Friday morning. I'm assuming he'll be out, but I was thinking about it's like, okay, well, once every 4 games, he's getting a technical, and now every subsequent technical that he gets for these final 22 games, he will get a suspension for. So what are we tracking for? About 4 or 5 games suspended. I know I could actually get one.
I've been texting Jim all morning, and our over under was like 2. Like, would you put the over under? I mean, maybe 2.5 to give you a little spice. But like, if I said 2.5 games, he's going to get suspended because of technicals. Over. Where would you go? Over. Okay, so that's 3 out of the next 22, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a while he will. I mean, it's just like the fines and stuff that he was in for swearing when he was doing post game media. Yeah, I was there for that, and there for once his fine totals reached like $300,000 for he didn't swear for like, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, and he's back swearing now.
Fuck yeah.
So, it's I don't know. I mean, it's I do think that will I do think Ant will be suspended for multiple games this the rest of the way. I think like. And I know and we can talk about this some too. I know there's specific like foul gripes in that game. I think me, like my whole biggest thing with refs always is I don't like when refs lose control of the game, like one way or the other, and it was clear that game was just lost. They lost control of it. But my bigger takeaway, rather than like another game that the refs, maybe missed some calls or the free throw disparity was really in the Lakers' favor. My biggest thing is, and we've kind of been talking about this for a few weeks, maybe over a month, like this Wolves team does not have a good relationship with the officials this season, and like that can matter even if in a separate silo the refs being bad matters too. Like I do think you do talk to people around the league and stuff like that, like there is less experience and quality in the officials now, right? Today's day and age, I don't think we have a very great officiating right now, but that can be true. And then also through that, not having a good relationship with them. It stands out. I mean, you and I both watch a lot of the other teams closely. The Wolves stand out as like the Clippers did back in the 2010s, as like that team that clearly has one of, if not the biggest problems with the officials night tonight. And I couldn't help but think about that last night when the game spiraled out of control and the refs were clearly, I think too much so, taking it out on the officials. I thought about, Finch the day before, laughing on Colin Cowherd about calling a ref a bozo before he got ejected. I thought about Ant being rather casual about racking up technicals to the degree that he has. It's a not just last night, but kind of top down. It's been a team that's had a disconnect between what they are expecting out of the officials and I think what just reality is.
We've flirted with this before, but since you're on the road more than I am, and even in the home locker room, there is a scouting report with photos of the officials in the Timberwolves locker room, whether they're home or away. Yeah. And it's not just like Dane's picture and Dane Moore. It's like some scouting report things of like tight whistle or don't let you talk shit. So this isn't like some out of the blue thing. Like they know on a nightly basis who is officiating the game and what their tendencies are. And I also thought, Finch, everyone loved, probably myself included, after the Thunder game when he's just came out of the blue and was like, the officiating, you can't touch Shea, they foul all the time. Okay. And then the Cowherd thing the next day where he confirms what we knew back in Phoenix, where he called the refs a bozo. Mm-hmm. And then last night again, it's just, because I was rewatching it this morning, and I could, really biased, make an argument that both of Ant's technicals were weak. In terms of the first one, it seemed like he was just mixing it up with Vando to, I think, kind of defend Dante. Dante and Vando kind of ran into each other at half court. Ant, famously, again, we should talk a little bit more about Anthony Edwards as the person.
Sure. Yeah.
Remember a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago, when there was like some shit talking going on, and he was like, Vando, you've been hurt for 2 years. I would imagine Jared Vanderbilt remembered that last night when he shoved Ant, right? But Ant doesn't have the ability to just collect these double technicals anymore. Like you maybe in November, but you can't do that now. But even if you thought, and then the second one, I mean, oh my God, what an egregious kick of, it's funny that Anthony Edwards got kicked by Gabe Vincent and Austin Reeves got a free throw from it. Like that just summed up the game because the Wolves took 26 free throws and Austin and Luka combined for 24. But then to throw the basketball out of bounds is fucking bullshit. Like you can't do that, man. You just can't do that. And I think he knew it right away. And Mike Conley said after the game that he apologized. But it was just, those are the moments that...
I saw him walking around with that ball, and I was like, uh-oh. Somebody go get that ball.
Not like after KD got the scoring record or 40,000 or whatever. And he's like, I'm going to hold on to this one. That was a different thing. It's like, oh my God, please. Like, what is Joe Ingles for? Joe, just get on the court and smack the ball to his hand. But, I think he had... Because when he got that second technical and he's sitting on the ground... I think the entire world was like, oh my God, the officials, come on, like take your emotions out of it. They all had Ant's back, even though it was going to lead to a suspension because of how many he's accumulated. But the throwing the ball thing is just, you can't do that. Like that just makes you look like all of the other players in the league that, don't get a lot of respect. And I think this sucks because we should be talking about Lakers 111, Timberwolves 102, the fact that they came out flat. They had a couple days to rest. It wasn't like they had just flown in. They were in LA. They played poorly. They got out coached. JJ Redick ran circles around them. But I think we got to talk about this because it's kind of this thing now where I think it starts from Finch. Like I think it's this whole mentality where it's us against the world. And it kind of reminds me of like when LeBron tried being the bad guy in Miami and then later was like, that wasn't fun. I didn't like going into away arenas and getting booed. I don't think this mentality every night, even when the officials are absolutely terrible, just getting your guys to think that is not, I don't know, man. I don't know if Dagnall does that. Like, I don't know if some other coaches like put that idea into their players' minds, and it's just a really unfortunate situation for a team now entering the fourth quarter. They're down a couple, and they need to focus solely on basketball.
Yeah, and to be clear, why we're talking about this right here is one, like you said, it's been a theme for a long time, and two, it had such an impact on the game last night that Ant isn't allowed to play today. You know, those are big things, right? I think, and have said this and believe that, you know, this is something that starts with the coach at the top. And it has seemed, and, you know, Finch's outrage over the officials, it gives guys like Ant, guys like Nas, guys like a lot of players on this team, you know, freedom to kind of, like, what are you gonna say if you're Finch and Rudy starts, you know, griping and loses his head for a minute and a half in a game? You know, you can't really check Rudy there if you've been doing that the rest of the time. And I know it's clear and obvious, and the reason behind it with Finch is not that he has an uncontrollable temper or something like that. He is just outraged by the fact that he believes that these officials today are incompetent, rather in comparison to what it was before. I mean, this has been something, you know, that's been going on in the background for a while, and they've been sending clips and stuff like that and having real conversations with the league literally about the years of experience, like the years of experience of the officials, you know, who are doing these games, and just the quality of that going down. I get that. I mean, I could see me or you, if we were, you know, a coach and you're dealing with this factor that is relatively incompetent, you know, that would drive you crazy every single night. And it would be a lot harder than I think I'm saying or you're saying to just like put that to the side, like acknowledge the refs are this uncontrollable variable and just keep moving your train down the tracks. Like I get that would be hard. I just think there would be a real value if Inch could get a little bit more of that thinking, because with more of that thinking, I think he could do a better job of instilling a little bit more emotional control in the guys on his roster who have problems with the officials, namely Anthony Edwards, who has so many technicals 60 games into this season that he's already getting suspended for them. Like, Finch has to help himself and I think the rest of the roster with this. So I do think it's an important topic, because it could literally will cost them games the rest of the season. And I think if you establish some bad habits with it now, it could really cost you come playoff time. And none of this is me saying like the officials were right last night. It isn't. It's just like kind of having the discipline to be like, okay, deep breath, now what? Rather than like, no deep breath, fuck that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just gotta be the most productive thing would have to be to collectively have some more mental control surrounding this. Finch to the entirety of the roster, it seems.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you said, because you were just kind of putting it out there of how they probably think. But I fully, this would be a really good moment for me to be on the pod, because I sometimes am like, if you work in pro sports, or you like, or not just like media, but like you're a coach, you're a front office, like it's also just a job. Like it's just like a career that like I have a career and stuff. So this idea of, oh my God, I don't know if I can get over the fact that some of my colleagues are incompetent. Like, do you not think I think that at work, like in other departments? And if I just am refusing to like try to work together, what I'm trying to say is the officials are in one way or another the colleagues of the players and the coaches. And if you're just gonna be like, I just can't do it, then quit. Like everyone listening to this is like, oh my God, yeah, Shelly from HR is like so hard to work with, but if I just think about it all the time, I'm not gonna be able to get my shit done. So I think that's lazy. Like, I don't think you can, and you're not saying it, I'm just saying.
No, that's why I quit and started a podcast.
And that's why I'm probably going to get fired and have to do more podcasts for the haters. But I don't like that. And I'm basically putting a lot of it on Finch, because if I'm like, hey, look at this comeback, or look at how Ant's developed, or look at Jaylen now, except for last night, like he's not in the corners anymore. If this is maybe why I sometimes have been like, I wish Finch would take more technicals. I really do believe if Chris Finch had more technicals, Ant would have less. And maybe that's like a weird talking on both sides of my mouth. But when I saw Finch in Phoenix live get thrown out, Ant went from I'm mad to, oh, bleep, like I'm going to go hug coach and get him off the court, and then we're all just going to respond. And I think that would be one way to do this. Or another way would just be to have an adult conversation of like, hey, they're less smart than ever, the officials. But without them, we can't, you watch the Lakers, and outside of maybe Luka, I don't see guys like Austin Reeves and some of these guys talk to the officials the way that like Ant talks to the officials, or even Nas sometimes. So whatever the issue is, however it's being addressed in the past, it can't be addressed like that moving forward, because they already have, again, 8th place in the standings today. They could find their way, in my opinion, all the way up to 4 if they catch lightning in a bottle. But that's if they're focused for the next 22 games on playing basketball and playing the right, God forbid, 9 or 10 guys, and not all this other stuff. And the Ant ejection, both because of the second technical and then he's throwing the ball, like he's not playing tonight in Utah. I think that sucks for people that got tickets to go watch Anthony Edwards. But also, if they lose that game because there's no Ant, holy shit. Terrence Shannon Jr., come save us, and we'll talk about him. But now you're starting to not only affect one game, but multiple games. And that's just, that's bad. Like, that's bad leadership. That's bad maturity. That's bad everything. And again, I do want to highlight, I thought the officials were terrible last night. That was Luka and the Lakers in LA. That whistle is going to be crazy. But if you focus on it, you get a result like you did last night.
I do want to talk about Terrence Shannon Jr. Let's grab our first break here, though, to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino. And starting today, they have their $440,000 Truck Madness giveaway. It is just a lot of promotions that they have going on over the month of March. Basically, if you have your Island Passport Club card, your Players Club card at Treasure Island, every 10 base points you earn from playing different games at Treasure Island, spending there, you accrue these points, and for every one of those 10 points, you get one entry into this drawing that's going to give away $440,000 worth of prizes. There's a lot of quote unquote smaller prizes like $10,000 in cash or $1,500 in free slot play, but the 4 big things that they're giving away in the month of March is $60,000 Chevy gift cards. Those will be given away at the end of March. Like I said last time you were on, Kyle, I just think this would be a connection to this is go down there for March Madness. I think that'd be a really fun way to spend one of those Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays, just kind of hanging out, watching there. And there are, again, a lot of giveaways going on there. So for more information and a full list of upcoming promotions at Treasure Island, visit TICasino.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And maybe in 2025, it's the year that you're like, okay, I am ready to buy a home. I know that's a goal I have this season. To achieve goals, right? We got to figure out what steps we need to take to be able to have the necessary things we need for that. And in the realty game, you need a realtor to be able to kind of help you understand what it is you can afford and how you can go about doing that. Adriana at Coldwell Banker Realty has free consultations that you can sign up for to better understand where you're at with that. The perk we're adding is if you sign up for a free consultation, everyone who signs up for a free consultation with Adriana will be entered to win a pair of lower level tickets to a Wolves game later this season. Again, if you're thinking about buying or selling a home in Minnesota or Wisconsin, Adriana is licensed there. We'd love if you reached out to her. You can call or text her at 715-304-9920, or you can check out her website that has all the details on booking one of those consultations. That website is thedancingrealtor.com. Again, 715-304-9920, all that information in the show notes as well. If you are in the home buying process, do check out Adriana at Coldwell Banker Realty. Kyle, there were positives from this game. Terrence Shannon Jr. and Donte DiVincenzo. Well, I want to talk about those two guys first. We will talk. Yeah, I don't want to brush over the fact that this was not a good offensive game, and I think the real story of the game was their offensive struggles that they had. But because we started with the Ant piece, let's uncover some positive things, and one of them was clearly Terrence Shannon Jr., who finished with 25, 5 and 2 in 29 minutes of play. It was like sometime in the fourth quarter, I'm like, wait, what? He has 21, one of those sneaky production thing. Same thing happened at the Oklahoma City game on Monday. I think he had 20, or what did you have, 21 in that game there as well. The kid is showing what back at Summer League when we watched a couple of those games and made us go, hey, I think, and granted, this is before the DiVincenzo and Randle trade, and the Wolves were really looking like they needed another guy to be added to the rotation. We left Summer League going, I think Terrence Shannon Jr. could be a rotation player for the end of a rotation player for the Wolves for X, Y, and Z reasons. Those exact X, Y, and Z reasons are making themselves apparent over these last 2 weeks since he has entered the rotation. That force, that skill set that he has is working against small teams. It's working against bigger teams. And he is proving to be a player that this team very much can benefit from playing. I mean, get in line. It's gonna be hard to crack this rotation once everybody's healthy, but shout out to Theige. That was a really impressive 2-game performance from him.
He's getting really close to the whole Jarrett Culver situation. Remember back in the day when I was
whoa.
No, listen, let me land the plane, okay? I know planes are all over the place these days, but when I would look back at that draft and be like, man, I can't believe they got Naz Reid at 6th, and I just kind of make up fake news to be where, like, I can't believe Terrence Shannon Jr. fell all the way to the 9th in the lottery. No, he actually fell into the 20s. Watching him play, he had 17 and 10 against the Thunder, but it was an incredible performance, and they needed every bit of his toughness and his defense and just his, when he gets out, I mean, you coined this really well, but he does look like he's been shot out of a cannon. And I remember when we sat courtside for that first Summer League game, remember the guy next to us was just covering the game like as from Illinois, like he was an Illinois writer. And he was telling, and that was when we were still trying to navigate, like, why did he fall? What was that whole off the court situation, which I think he was completely cleared from. And it was like that hurt his draft stock. Kind of reminds me of like when you look at these young guys the Wolves have, like Jaylen Clark, lottery pick probably if he doesn't tear his Achilles, and the Wolves are like, okay, that's, depreciated value. We're going to go get him. Terrence Shannon Jr. had an off the court thing, which ended up being, kind of bogus. He falls. And then you look at him play, and all I can think of is you can't put him back in the box. Like, whatever you want to do, you want to talk about rotations, and when Julius comes back, and Dante, it seems like, had a minutes restriction last night. Just because he did. Okay. Yeah. So when he gets more playing time, but I say today what I said last week, he stands for everything this team needs, like toughness, fearlessness. When he falls down or gets hit in the face, he just kind of gets up and he's like, well, I'm a rookie, whatever, I'm supposed to get punched in the face. But he gets downhill at a rate that I already ruined this, but I was going to ask you, like, hey, do you have a player comp for Terrence Shannon Jr.? Because you and Jace have been, like, hey, is Nas Jesus Christ? And it's like, why don't we come up with one for him? But he reminds me of like Eric Bledsoe in transition. Obviously, he's bigger than Eric Bledsoe, but the way Bledsoe would just turn the Jets on and it's almost impossible to guard, and it's either going to be a layup or 2 free throws. Like, is there someone that when you watch him, because I see a lot of people say Kelly Oubre, but he's like a bowling ball. Like, he is unguardable in transition the way he uses his body and finds ways to still even get to that left hand, even if he's on the right side of the rim.
Yeah, I mean, it's the force part of it is like transition for sure, but I think what stood out to me is like even when it's not transition and he can like, there's been a couple times where he's just like, how the game like breaks on you, like randomly catch it at the elbow and he's like, rather like, what do I do here? And he can like explode off of like no dribbles.
Yeah, I love that.
From the elbow like to the rim, and there's when I clipped this, I just remember it because I clipped it and tweeted it out last night. There's one play from the Thunder game. He's in the right corner. I don't know if it's Caruso, but somebody good was like defending him. That would be hard to get by. And he took like one left-handed dribble from the right corner and finished a reverse layup on the left side of the basket, the opposite side of the basket. One dribble. It's that kind of push ahead, and it's that force to go not only get through, but go far while you're getting through, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there probably are lower level players like that, but what I think of that specific element of it, where you see that is Zion. Like I know what you mean.
Calm down. Everyone calm down.
There's just these like it's this ability to go forcefully and a distance in a short space while also having like the bulk to kind of go through whoever it is. I'm not saying he's Zion, but like stylistically, because this part I didn't really get. I got the transition stuff. We saw that in training camp. We've seen that in garbage time when he's played. That he's still packing a big long punch in like really condensed spaces. There's just in today's NBA, there's a lot more like speed, finesse, like vertical athleticism athletes. There's fewer force athletes, right? And so when I think about Terrence Shannon Jr.'s force when it's awesome, I think about things that I see Zion do at times.
And I also think you can kind of thread this back to segment 1 where he's older, right? Like by the time Rob Dillingham is Terrence Shannon Jr.'s age, he'll be on his second contract, right? Like Terrence is 24. He's one of the older guys on the team despite being a rookie. But I think just because of all those extra basketball reps, he understands how to like work with contact. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys on the Wolves that play kind of finesse basketball at times, and he's just not one of them. But also, when you do play a physical style basketball, a la maybe Ant, and you don't get the whistle, again, maybe it's because TJ's a rookie, but you just kind of see him be like, oh shit, okay, and then turn around to get back on defense and just kind of put aside all the BS and just, I mean, when he's out there with some of these lineups, it's just guys playing basketball. There's no drama or politics. It's just, okay, get back on defense, attack on offense. And I think what you're saying is, like in that play in the corner, I don't know, that's kind of reminds me of like what Jaden's been doing now when he's spotted up in the corner and gets a cross-court pass. It's just immediately attack downhill. But no one on the team outside of Ant can really do it like Terrence does. And I just go back to, I mean, tonight you're going to see against the Jazz more Terrence Shannon Jr. because Ant's not going to be in the game. But the amount of different things you can do with him, I mean, in that Thunder game, he was playing like weird power forward at times, which, again, small ball, Jaden at the 5, whatever. But I liked how he could rebound in that Thunder game, too. He's not just, I mean, we thought, oh, man, he was 4th in college last year in free throw rate or whatever. But there's other parts to his game, like you just said, or like the rebounding, or I even think, small sample size, but I think his defense, if he gets switched on to a guy, he's like, okay, I've been hanging out with Jaylen Clark enough. I know just to move my body and like move my feet and stay in front of Luka. He's a really interesting piece that, again, a team with very few assets needs to hit on. But moving forward, and whenever you want to talk about this or put a pin in it, I don't know how you put that back on the shelf because you come back to having 8 full starters. He has to play because not only is he good, but he leads to winning. Very small sample. But you know what I mean? Like he leads to, when he's out there, productive runs and moments of a game where your team finds themselves playing really good basketball. So credit to him and all the stuff he's been through and like the whole Jersey thing. But he's just another ingredient into this mix where, like I said last week, and I believe it even more today, Chris Finch is the most important person these last 22 games, because if he pulls the right levers and gets some of these guys into the rotation, I think they have a chance to make a little run. And if he goes back to just benching some of these guys, I think that's going to be really, really disappointing.
The thing I think I like about him, or that makes sense to me from him staying in the rotation, is I do kind of think like a small role is probably like the best role for him. You know, you get the most like efficient version of him. Because like last night, when in the fourth quarter, when it became pretty clear, and I think clear to him, where it's like, all right, I'm really Ant's out. Jaden and Naz are not playing well. Like, I'm kind of a really good, like the best option we have here. And then it was some turnovers and stuff like that. A little bit too much chaos. But if you can like tuck his chaos into the 4th or 5th option at any given time when he's out there, then that's when those type of forceful players, you know, start sneaking up on you. And this is why the Zion comp isn't, you know, a real comp. It's that Zion can do that, play with that force when he's, you know, the first or second option out there. Terrence did lead tied with Naz for the team lead in turnovers last night as well. But he's not going to play 29 minutes a night, I don't think, once people are back. But I think there's like a role where you could really pack a punch with him, get the best things from his game, while not kind of tapping into maybe some of the youthful, chaotic elements of it as well. Dante DiVincenzo, also I thought was a bright spot in his return. There's only 9 points. You know, you look at this whole stat line: 9 points, 5 boards, 6 assists in 23 minutes. He was 3 of 6 from 3. I'd kind of been theorizing that I think Dante was going to be the easiest reintegration between Julius, Rudy, and Dante when they come back. Dante fits into this smaller style that they've been playing, and we know from before he was hurt, when he was starting next to both Randle and Gobert, that he can fit really well in that as well. Dante, I mean, I had to remind myself of how well Dante was playing before he got hurt. He moved into the starting lineup 6 games prior to getting hurt. And in those 6 games, he was averaging 17, 5 and 5, shooting 42% from 3 on almost 10 attempts per game. He was really, really playing well, but before he went down, I think it was just a theory, right? That Dante was going to be able to kind of fit into this newer, different version of how they're playing. But I think even though the stat line doesn't scream it, I think we got some evidence in that game last night that Dante is going to be able to fit into it quickly. Finch said in his post-game press conference that he is going to play again tonight, so not going to rest. So it'll be interesting to see him take on maybe a bigger usage role. I think he'll probably still be limited at about 24 minutes of what he can play, but let's see a little bit of that preseason Dante, let's set some high screens for him. Let's see what we can do in the middle of the floor. You're limited in your offensive options there. I think there's some upside to this team and what Dante can be in these last 22 games this season.
Maybe it's a low bar, but I actually thought his box score did kind of jump out just because it was 9 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, no turnovers, all while, and this is an eye test thing, he was out of shape. Because you can't be in NBA shape your first game back, especially when you've had a lower body injury, like a toe or a foot. Sure. You probably don't have the cardio. It's one of the biggest takeaways I ever get from going to shoot around in the morning is just how much extra stuff it takes in the work yourself into shape league or whatever to get back into NBA shape. So he looked a half step slow last night just because he doesn't have elite NBA endurance yet. That'll come with more minutes. And I think doing what he did last night, you're totally right. He's just easier to integrate into a team that needs more and more guys to, Dante never lived in Des Moines, but play the Iowa Wolves 0.5 mentality of just, he even had a rebound once where he got a long rebound at the free throw line and immediately just turned the Jets on, scooped it to Rob to get into transition. I think it led to a Terrence dunk. It was that crazy Terrence dunk. So he just gets it. He just gets how to play basketball, and I still think whether the story of this season be maturity or losing these games they shouldn't lose or whatever, it's just they need more guys out there that know how to play basketball, and it was refreshing to have him play last night. It's really refreshing that he's going to play again tonight because that kind of means that minutes restriction aside, he's kind of freed to work himself back into this, and they're going to need him because no offense, it is offensive, but if he didn't have a minutes restriction, he should have started. And I just don't think this team anymore, and I know you were kind of tweeting about this, not to just dovetail into Mike Conley, but Dante has to be the starting point guard for this team until they figure out the Rob stuff down the road or whatever. I just think he gives them way more juice, albeit when he's fully healthy, than whatever's going on with the whole Mike Conley stuff. So,
yeah, no, I think that's fair to bring up the Conley stuff. It was another Conley game where we talked about this after your last episode you did with me was after the Houston game, and one of the first things we talked about was, all right, Houston's not starting any small guys. Who's the Conley matchup? And Conley was guarding Amen Thompson. That they decided that was going to be the place that they were going to hide him. Well, Conley picked up 3 fouls in 6 minutes in that game. And, is the same thing against the Lakers last night, right? They go Hayes, Hachimura, LeBron, Luka, Reeves. And so, I'm just sitting there waiting so long for that game to start at 9:30 p.m. last night. Is sitting at my computer, kind of be like, hey, how are they going to approach this? And I'm like, damn, another game where there's not a matchup for Mike. He's probably going to get exposed, and he did. I 100% agree as somebody who I still think is on the playing Conley still makes sense to me, and even starting him sometimes makes sense to me. I'm still like on that side of it. But what I said after that Houston game is I was like, it's got to be matchup specific, and you got to think about who he's going to guard, how he's going to be guarded. His finger is in a cast still every game, on his hand, his right hand. Like he's limited. He's not going to be able to, I think give them enough, particularly in minus matchups, to justify his starting. Like we said, DiVincenzo's on a minutes restriction. As I thought more about starting Conley, I was like, well, you should bring Conley off the bench so he can guard Gabe Vincent or Jordan Goodwin or some of the smaller guys that are, coming off the bench for them. But then that gets complicated. Those are the guys that Rob Dillingham needs to guard as well.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, if you move Conley there, so he's only guarding those guys, then maybe Rob Dillingham doesn't play at all. And you couldn't have benched Rob after he just had an awesome close to that Thunder game. I don't know. I think with some discipline around the Conley minutes and some more matchup specific strategy, I think Conley's shortcomings will become less egregious as the roster gets a little bit more to full strength. But yeah, this wasn't the first time Mike's been relatively exposed defensively for being, undersized and kind of out physical than it. And yeah, Dante has more of that. He just at 27 versus Mike at 37, a little bit more size as well. Like he can handle more of those matchups defensively than Conley can, and in turn reasonably can be expected to be maybe significantly more productive than Conley's been.
Hand up. I only use this when it suits me. But Mike was a team worst, minus 17 last night. Dante was a team best, plus 15. We don't like plus minus, but sometimes you're just kind of like, oh, I could see that. I think Mike's been hurt literally by having his finger in a cast. But I also think just not having Rudy around. I mean, Mike's had some of his best years playing with big guys, right? Like Greg Oden and Rudy and stuff. So I think it would be useful to get Rudy back, and whether Mike will then probably come off the bench again and maybe just have some stints where okay, let's run a couple plays where it's just Mike and Rudy, and we'll kind of dovetail off that. But it's just tough because last night I thought Redick and his staff and LeBron and Luka, who are like coaches on the court, anytime Mike was out there, they just found a switch and they just went to it. And there were so many times, like even like Rui in the post or something, says if Mike was on a guy, they were targeting him. And that's kind of what we feared with Rob, So I just don't know. And Mike, unfortunately, if I'm getting older too, but like if I had bronchitis and you didn't like how I sounded on this, it'd be like, well, he's got bronchitis. But yeah, but you sound like shit. With Mike, if the production's not there and he can't have a burst or he can't get to his spots, and this is different than November. Like you have now Jaylen Clark who can come in and give you something. Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob, who had, one of his most successful games in that Thunder thing. Because I thought that too. I was like, you know what? Maybe just shelf Rob for a little bit. But that goes against everything I believe in. So as I'm dissecting these games and watching it and knowing that Julius is coming back here soon and Dante's pretty much back in the mix and Ant will come back after tonight's game, my sole focus on this thing is these final 22 games and how you're going to, I think 10 guys should play right now, and that doesn't include Rob. You know what I mean? So, I was trying to do the exercise today of like, do you do hockey lineups and stuff, and where does Mike come in? But I was shocked that Mike started last night because Nikhil's kind of been filling that role for Dante. Maybe Nikhil, Ant, Jaylen kind of trio to start, but I get why they do it because Finch trusts him. But I think that trust is wavering just because Mike just can't do it right now. I don't know if he's washed. Maybe he's just a year-long injury, but it wasn't good last night, and it really, I thought, led to that early first quarter where they were down 20, and they took, I think, 85% of their shots in the first quarter from three because they didn't have anyone that could get downhill.
It's going to be interesting to see if we can assume that Dante moves in the starting lineup as the starting point guard in time. What does Finch choose between the trust he has in Mike Conley versus the burst that he can get from Rob Dillingham?
That's the conservative thing that we've talked about, right? Mm-hmm. Mike Conley is safer still than Rob or than maybe a crazy Terrence outburst because, like you said, he's a change of pace back. But at what point does conservatism be your downfall.
Right.
That was about sports. Like, I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you figure that out? So, I don't know. And again, too, like with Julius coming back, we're not doing a Nas thing again, but if you think Julius is going to come back and start, you sure as hell can't also start Mike, because then we're back to game 1 in LA where this offense has no juice. So maybe it was a one-night thing. Maybe once they get Ant back and Julius back and Rudy obviously back, he'll find the right rhythm. But I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't concerned about how some of these guys who look really good have a very significant chance of lowering their minutes. And that's concerning. I think that's what the fan base feels right now, and it's kind of why it's toxic.
Let's talk a little bit about the offensive struggles in that game. You mentioned early in the first quarter, it was just apparent the lead. There's just this gap in the score developing, and it's because this team, the Wolves team, could not score effectively. The Lakers have been playing really good defense recently, and they were doing a really good job of kind of like walling off the middle of the floor. It wasn't a game where Ant could get into the middle of the floor to the rim to do his thing, and they in turn needed somebody else to be able to break the paint, as Finch says, right? And without Julius Randle in the game, you look to Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels to be those guys if it's not gonna be Anthony Edwards in that game. And it was not a good Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid game, but it was specifically hurtful to the offense. Like, you could, when the Wolves are at full strength, I think you can survive a Naz and Jaden game like that a little bit more, because you have other players who can get into the middle of the floor and create for you some. They needed that last night in the offense to be able to go. Ant was being walled off, and those guys weren't able to be the release valve that when Julius Randle has been good, the release valve that Julius Randle has been for Ant against those type of coverages.
Yeah, I don't know if I think you tweeted this, right? Like, this would have been a good night for Julius. And you're so right. I also wanted to push back because it kind of, I mean, you got to go a whole year calling it the weirdest team ever, so I'm just going to keep saying gap year. But I was like, man, I guess it would have been good to have Julius last night. It would have, for sure. He would have solved a lot of those issues. Even just getting him like at the free throw line, it was kind of weird. I mean, the Lakers kind of threw a weird zone at Ant that the Wolves threw at SGA, and they didn't have an answer. But I also would have just loved, if you're one of the people that thinks Julius isn't fit for this team long term, if some of the guys that we've been glazing up would have just figured it out. Like, why was Jaden's first 4 threes from the corner? Like, why? I thought we got away from that. And again, he probably at some point in his career does need to take those and make them. But that was a frustrating thing, that these endpoints of a player of a set was, again, Jaden in the corner, just taking those threes. You know what I mean? And I don't.
Yeah, but let's talk about that some. Like, I agree. I agree. I'm not like, yeah, Jaden corner threes or anything. But there is some. The more a team sells out to stop the first guy in the chain, right? The more open the last guy is in the chain, right? To swing,
sure.
swing. And it's like, it's almost designed to make it so that last guy in the chain is so open. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I'm just talking through this. I'm with you, but like, what in that situation when Jaden catches it in that spot on the perimeter is he supposed to do? Yeah, sometimes he's like done a good job of like grabbing it on the catch and go. But some of these, I mean, they were clearly, like on the scouting report, it was like stop short. It was.
Oh yeah.
It was like, do not close out onto this. So then when Jaden's in that position, he's kind of like has to shoot that three. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, well, then you need to put him in a different position, maybe, to not even be there. But it's hard when you're trying to play this spread floor look. You're trying to react off of 2 on the ball, to Ant. Like, what I guess I don't know exactly what that could have looked like.
That's
maybe
fair.
A little bit more of him as a screener, but it's against that cover. It's easy to use Jaden as a screener when Ant just is coming down and he has one guy on him. It's a little bit. I don't think it was so simple as like a choice where they're like, we're back to Jaden shooting corner threes. That's all I'm going to say. But I agree, still shouldn't be that many of them.
No, I don't think it was like the first thing on the whiteboard. It was a negative result that, again, I love Jaden, but I mean, Jared Vanderbilt's shooting higher from the corners this season than Jaylen is, on a much lower volume. But it's just kind of frustrating that those. I mean, I think the most frustrating thing for me from the game, officiating side and ejection aside, was that this team came into crypto and in the first quarter against a team that played a center of Jackson Hayes or nobody, and Jackson Hayes isn't really a good center, they took 14 of their 20 shots in the first quarter from three. They had no desire to try to, and that's kind of, I guess, supporting your Julius take of they had no one to put pressure on the middle of the lane or at the rim, and they just freely took all these threes. And as we've seen, the worst version of it was that Rockets-Warriors series. It's like if you just never go inside the three-point line and you have an off-shooting night, you're cooked by halftime. And no matter how well you can fight back and start pulling levers, which they did in the second half, it doesn't really matter. And that's the antithesis of basketball for me. Like, I don't want a team that just goes three-point line to three-point line. And to come back to Jaylen and Naz, I mean, we've been very high on them, and I was doing the trio of OKC versus True Wolves thing, and I think they're really good players, and I'm not gonna offer them less money in free agency because of last night. But once you become $100 million player, $150 million player, you can't have goose eggs. You can't just Naz Reid can't be scoreless midway through the third. When we're talking about paying them, maybe 25, 30 million a year and making them the starting power forward. So those guys just kind of had to be better. But some of it too was, again, I really think one of my biggest takeaways this season, I think JJ Redick is an awesome basketball coach. I didn't think he'd want to grind like this, but everything the Wolves do well this season through the first 59 games, I thought Redick had it scouted so well last night. And it's like the Wolves just had no counters for that. And that's kind of why I was dumbly ranting about, well, why did it just end with Jaylen in the corner? It's because I thought they had fixed that or gotten over it. But to your point, what else do you want to do?
Could have been more. I mean, at halftime they'd taken 6 shots at the rim and 25 from 3, and and to me that's first about it has to be about the way in which they're getting guarded, right? The coverage against them. But then 2, I think if you get to a point where you don't like what your offense is generating off of that defensive coverage, then it's about a structure, putting more of a structure in place to get to something else, a different action that, put Ant in a better spot. Like, do we see enough of Ant coming off ball, like pin down, like let's get him here, have Jaylen initiate the offense here, or Nikhil initiate the offense here, so as to get Ant to catch in a spot where he's just not 30 feet from the basket, top of the key with 2 guys guarding him. Those are the other things that you can do if you're Finch and the coaching staff there. I also didn't feel like Ant really wanted to do that stuff last night, before he was ejected. I don't think it was a very dedicated chessboard game from Ant either. And then these are just there's just going to be things you got to do, right? Finch, Ant, Jaylen, Naz, whatever, to win. Like, you didn't win because you didn't have answers for this defense. You weren't hitting your shots. You needed to be able to do different things to generate better offense. That was clear, obvious. First half, second half, you're right. It was a little bit better, but it's far too often with this Wolves team where it's the whole first quarter and it just feels like offensively they're banging their head against the wall, and I think part of that's the coach. I think part of that's the players. And at the end of the day, it's just something that needs to be better or needs different options. And that's why, to the Julius Randle point, I think
good point.
I think Julius could have just given you another element of your playbook, another element of your flow that would have punctured the defense a little bit more in a way where now they want to put 2 on Ant, but Julius is getting downhill, forcing them to bring a second body. Okay, now we're playing 4-on-3 elsewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Julius is better at getting downhill and creating offense than Naz and Jaylen are combined. That's just that's his strength, right? So I just thought it was a reminder of a game that Randle being back will at times serve as a very profitable release valve for this offense.
Yeah, and just to follow up quickly on your Ant didn't seem like he was super into it. He came into the game questionable. maybe the coach wasn't fully into the chessboard or whatever. That's just inexcusable. Like, that's just like, that's, if you would have said that on Black Friday, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. I'm turkey. I'm a little sleepy too. But like, this kind of makes me think of when Finch called out Ant or whatever in that thing in Phoenix about like, do you respect the game? Do you like the game? All that shit has to just go out the window like immediately, because you don't just get to take nights off. Like, it's not January anymore. We're going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's March 1st. And like, if you want to not make this a gap year, and if you think that this team can have their cake and eat it too in 2 timelines, like that their approach, like you knew it from the first 4 minutes last night of they're not going to win this game no matter what they do. Yeah, it's awesome that they came back against OKC, but I think the Lakers team has a little more maturity or just reps of big game stuff, right? Luka and LeBron and JJ and stuff. So I just hated it. And I also thought it was really from a dumbed down basketball for dummies like me. The way they guarded Ant, to your point of like, why isn't Jaylen running something at the top and getting Ant coming off ball or whatever? It was the exact same thing of when I watched the OKC game. It's like, why don't they just have Shea not at the top? Then they can't double him or hold, like, put Shea in a corner, put Shea like cutting, whatever. It's the recipe that won them the Oklahoma City game was the recipe that was thrown against them to beat them last night. And they had no counters to that. And that's like inexcusable because you created the recipe.
Yeah, as it was inexcusable for Oklahoma City too, to blow the lead in that same way. I think the one thing, man, that is just driving me crazy with the offense is it's too damn slow. It's like you gotta play in transition more, and that they aren't playing in transition like significantly more when Rudy's out. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, make that make sense to me. That is one that it's just got to be like a demand. Just a demand. Like, you're sick of 2 on the ball every single time you walk it into the half court. Well, don't play in the half court. Let's get those like hit ahead passes, get some of that semi transition. The Wolves are dead last in the league in transition frequency this season. Dead last.
Inexcusable for a team that has that many young players, and now your 2 slowest, quote unquote, or most plodding players in Rudy and Julius haven't played in a week. That you can't do that. It's inexcusable.
I looked it up. So last in the league in transition opportunities, it's 13.2% of their possessions this season. When Rudy's out there, it's even slower. It is, and there's you're gonna play slower with Rudy Gobert. It's 12.6%, which would be obviously lower than any team in the NBA. But I did the Rudy off the floor. What's the transition like with Rudy off the floor? It's 14.2% of the possessions, which is the equivalent of 25th in the league, 6th lowest rate. Why in the minutes? Why in the like? Explain. I'm serious. It's like, how does that gear not turn on? Of like, okay, no Rudy, it's Nas at the 5, it's Julius at the 5. Like, let's go. I don't, and the real confounding part of it to me is it's like, it's very obvious when they do go that the opportunities that they get off of it once they get to their side of the floor are significantly cleaner. I really liked in the Houston game. Remember the Houston game? They lost that game, the first one after the break. There was constant hit-ahead passes, and what they were doing, it was just like, all right, somebody gets the rebound, quick outlet to the guard who's going to bring it up, Mike or Ant or whatever, and then it's another hit-ahead pass down the court to Nas or Jaylen, like right at the 3-point arc, and the defense is still coming back, and now it's Jaylen like 1-2 move, go. Remember, like, beginning of that Houston game, Jaylen had that semi-transition. Şengün picks him as the first or second bucket of the game, and Jaden's like catches it like kind of on the move right into dribble between off the backboard. Remember he hit that one, the pull up on Şengün. That they don't get to more transition offense, period, is crazy to me. But specifically, it's just disappointing to see that number is that low, even when Rudy Gobert is off the floor for this team. And I think, like many things, that's something I put on both Finch and Ant to demand that the group plays that way more so. And if they do, it's like, I mean, it's just a number. That's a fact. Like, the more you play in transition, the better offense gets. And I just, particularly when you're having offensive struggles, particularly when the half court is bogged down that way, to me, that's timeout, and it is grab, like you're saying, Nas, Jaden, whoever, grab and go,
Mhm.
And if we got to turn it into a half court possession, you got to turn it into a half court possession. But let's at least get that first look ahead to see if you can get a shifted defense that you can attack. That one doesn't make sense to me.
And what made it more frustrating? That a player who is being publicly body shamed right now and a 40-year-old who is hooping like we've never seen before, but is out transitioning them.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many, you're talking about look ahead passes, how many 3/4 court heaves did Luka just get a rebound and instead of pushing, because he's also kind of not in full basketball shape yet as he returns, but just gets a 40-yard pass down to LeBron, who is just outrun everyone else on the team. The only highlight of the Timberwolves game last night was with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, where I said this earlier, Dante gets a rebound, throws it right to Rob. Go back and watch it, and it leads to Terrence's really cool dunk. All 5 Wolves players are past half court, and there's only one Laker. Because it's just a bunch of dudes, young dudes, even Luka, just get out and run, get out and run, get out and run. You can't be outrun in a game by a team like the Lakers, who also likes to play really slow. Like the whole mentality last night should have been, let's lock up on defense. We still got a lot of guys that can defend even without Rudy. And then once we get the ball, put the pressure on them. And that just goes back to, in a boxing analogy, the Lakers just came out punching last night. And the Wolves just completely were like, all right, cool, we'll just take those punches. And then when they get Ant out of there, who I think is one of the main drivers to a slower pace, which is like so crazy to say.
Oh, that's just true.
It goes, I had a note. It's just like when Ant's out, there's no bullshit. They just play basketball. And last night, the best way to play basketball in the second half was to just play fast. And that's what Terrence wants to do. And that's what Rob would like to do. And I think in OKC, you saw it. Jaden is comfortable getting into transition and going slow, Euro 1-2, to the rim. So, and so does Nas. Like Nas loves it too. So coaching staff probably gets the most blame for that because, again, I think... And Ant. Yeah. Yep. But it's just, again, I don't want to keep saying inexcusable, but that is an underlying story of the season that you have so many, even with Rudy and Julius, you have so many young guys that I think would thrive in a more chaotic style of basketball. I mean, there are teams in the league whose identity is chaos, right? Like I think of like Indiana, where they're like, we're just going to run and do crazy shit and try to outscore you. I don't know if that's a successful playoff strategy. I think you need to be more well-rounded, and I think the Wolves have like a good base defense and those types of things, but just not embracing the fun, chaotic stuff you have on your roster was, I guess, whatever for the first 3 chapters of this thing, but it's a real thing now that could prop them up. That could be, you talk about lightning in a bottle. It might be younger guys in transition who play with force, and to just put that bottle away would be super disappointing and would leave a really bad taste in your mouth for how you kind of approached this, whatever you want to call it, type season.
Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And one cool thing that Falling Knife does is they stay open late when the Wolves games are late tips. For the Lakers game, tipped at 9:30 last night. They stayed open, all the way until that game ended, probably around midnight or whatever. And on Friday and Sunday, the Wolves remain on the West Coast, and those are both 8:30 p.m. tip-offs. And they will again be staying open late to show the entirety of that game. They have the sound on, they have the projection screens on. It's a cool thing they do, and I think shows their commitment to being a or the Wolves bar in Minneapolis. So I wanted to put that on your radar. Obviously, Friday night is probably easier to make a 8:30 tip, happen, go out for drinks and stuff with your friends. But Sunday night is as well as an option. And I just wanted to throw out that on Sunday nights, that's when they have all their different types of trivia. They have 30 Rock trivia at 5 p.m. On Sunday nights. If you want to make a night out of it, go there early, do trivia, get some dinner there, Rectangle Pizzas there, and hang around for the game as well. But just know that even for these really late tips, Falling Knife remains open. Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Kyle, let's do our prize picks for the Wolves Jazz game this evening. I was looking through some. Did you have any that you liked?
Well, Flex Friday again, so go participate in that. You get kind of a protected
Yeah, why don't you
play.
explain that quick?
Just if you go into, I think it's the promos tab of your app, and you just go, it'll be Flex Friday. You got to opt in and then build your lineup, and basically depending on how much you wager, I think you can have up to like $35. So basically, just go pick 3 or 4 guys tonight, put something on it, and if it loses, you get $35 tops or whatever you put in there in promo credit. So it's kind of a fun way to have free skin in the game type thing. But as I'm looking at the board with you, I mean, the first one that stood out was Mike Conley, more or less than 9.5 points. But I just think Naz Reid, whatever you want to do, points, rebounds, assists, whatever. I just think Naz has a really big game. I don't think Julius is coming back tonight. So there's going to be a lot of Naz Reid. He seems like the type of guy that responds to what was a pretty big dud last night. And again, with no Ant, how are you going to get scoring? How are you going to get even like assists? Like, how are you going to lead to a good offense? So I like Naz Reid more than 33.5 points, rebounds, and assists.
I put down, I was just kind of looking, and I had a Nikhil one up here too that went away in the time we've been recording. But with Ant out, I was thinking Mike and Nikhil as guys who will get more usage, more shots. You think you saw that with Nikhil last night, even though he didn't play well. The one I put on here was Mike Conley more than 12 points plus rebounds. I like that one, but wouldn't hate any of the Nikhil more thans as well. And then Lauren Markkinen not having the same. I mean, I was really surprised to see how low some of his totals were. It's 27.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, just points 20.5. Like, I feel pretty confident that against this Wolves defense that's missing some pieces, that Markkinen has more than 20.5 points as well. But it's always fun. It's it's more fun doing these. Yes. I think with the Wolves, where you can actually kind of be like, all right, I have an idea of how this might move, and it's a fun little thing to have going on a game. Even it can just be for $5, whatever it might be. PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app. Do that Flex Friday thing. Like, you can make a $35 up to a $35 lineup, and if it doesn't hit, then your $35 are credited back into your account. But even if you do like a 3-to-1 on 35, like that can be $100 right there, if just like a 2-player lineup. So I would always, if you are a PrizePicks player, try and take advantage of those on Friday nights.
I also think a lot of smart fans listen to this. I mean, that's just a fact. Like, this fan base is, with what they've gone through, is really, really smart. And it's kind of a fun way. Like, we all can kind of predict, right, at nights. Like, I think a lot of people thought lazy game coming into LA, a lot of other fun things to do in Los Angeles. So if you're like, I kind of have a vibe for, it's going to be a bad Nas game, or it's going to be like a really big Terrence Shannon Jr. game. I think that's also what kind of makes PrizePicks fun, is you can kind of predict like you're one of us, just coaching up that guy who's going to play well tonight and who's not going to play well. So yeah, shout out to PrizePicks. Hey,
and it could just be $5, like just like I'm testing my theory for $5 right here. I think that's fun. Go ahead.
If you get enough of those theories right, you can maybe own the team. Do you want to just give a quick shout out to Jaylen Clark? I know we're trying to wrap it up for the week, but because you are the cap guy and you're the guy that gets it all, I just kind of more so wanted to have a quick convo about it's awesome because Jaylen Clark is awesome. And I've said before that I got to kind of know him a little bit, and he's a really cool kid who bet on himself and has come back from what I still deem as like a devastating type injury. But this week it's announced that, well, just take it away. Like, what happened this week with his contract status?
Yeah, well, Jaylen Clark was on a 2-way contract, which is not it's not a guaranteed NBA contract. It's kind of how it worked, like financially, is if you're on a 2-way contract and you get enough days with the team, you do your 50 days with the team, as Clark would have. I think it's like you would make $450,000 over the course of the season. Well, what happened with Clark, and because he's playing so well, is they gave him a raise off of that. They gave him a full minimum contract for the rest of the season, which that'll pay him about $500K alone on top of what he's made previously. But then he gets a guaranteed contract for next season as well, which is a minimum contract to be about $2.3 million for him. And that's just, sometimes I think with contracts, like, we forget just how much of a win it can be for some of these guys on a personal individual level. I mean, when he tore his Achilles 2 years ago, I don't know, like if you were investing in him in a stock, you know, how much money is this guy going to earn in his career? You know, maybe it wouldn't have been $3-4 million even in total. You know, a lot of times that player is just kind of in and out of the league, right? And you know, now Clark has earned some money, and literally earned it with his work. And I just think sometimes I get too far into the cap stuff. Just wanted to note that's cool for a kid who busted his ass and worked back from as serious of an injury as you can have, signed a 2-way contract. I mean, we keep making like the Nas Reed comparisons of really needing to grind your way. Like Jaylen, like Nas, is grinding his way and earn this contract. And because it's just a 2-year contract, he'll be up for another contract after the 2025-26 season. And that, I think, should be exciting for Wolves fans because he will still be a restricted free agent after he's on a minimum contract next season. Again, what restricted free agency means is, so after next season, he'll become a free agent. Another team can offer him a deal, and the Wolves have what's called the right of first refusal, which means somebody offers him, you know, a 3-year, $20 million contract, then, well, the Wolves have the right, you know, to match that. It gives you the power to be able to retain the players. So I thought this was a real win for both the player and the team, in that you lock him up from the team perspective. You lock him up on a really cheap contract, and you have team control, you know, going forward here because you have that restricted free agency after the fact. It's not the same Gupta special thing we talked about before with, you know, Nas Reed and Josh Minot were on those, you know, 4-year non-guaranteed minimum contracts. Yeah, I mean, that would have been great, but, you know, it's a piece of negotiating on Jaylen and his agent's part to get back out there. Well, I think the Wolves still have just about as much team control as they would have in a Gupta special situation by having his restricted free agency. So kids earned it. Makes sense to be in this team's rotation to some extent when it's at full strength. Probably even more so will make sense to be in the Wolves rotation when a season from now, when maybe they lose a player or two. Mm-hmm. It's a good piece of team building and done financially responsibly, you know, win across the board. And I like covering these, you know, these type of stories. It's a cool thing for Jaylen.
Michael Scott's favorite scenario: win. So just to sum it up, because again, I think the roller coaster I felt while we knew this was going to come was like, okay, cool, good for Jaylen. But then all of a sudden I came down to like, oh, he didn't get the Gupta special. But then I think it's really important, because I don't think I'd heard that yet, that next summer, so the 2026 summer, he'll be a restricted free agent, not just open for everyone to bid type thing. So I think that's really big. And
as like Nas was, remember Nas, when he got to the end of his, after year 4 of the Gupta special, he was an unrestricted free agent, you know, and he got offered that big contract from Cleveland. The Wolves did not have the right to just match that and retain Nas. They offered a different contract and got him to go there. But having restricted free agency, if it's a player you want to retain long-term, is huge. And this, every indication this gives is Jaylen Clark will be on the team, you know, for most of the 2020s. Mm-hmm. Like if barring something bad happening. So particularly when you consider the Wolves asset situation and lack of draft picks and those sort of things in the future. Yeah. That's big to have a young role player locked up.
I mean, he might not be on the team for that long based on how he was adamant last night in that challenge review, which he should have won. But that was, going back to officiating, that was insane. But I just think he's a great kid, and it's a great moment. And again,
you didn't think he touched him?
Anyway,
I'm asking.
No. Maybe.
I mean, it shouldn't have been a foul, but honestly, it's like the two different angles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought Gabe Vincent drop kicked Ant too, and that led to all this pandemonium. But I just think Austin Reeves gets a generational whistle.
Did you think he touched him or not?
I think he okay. Yeah, I think he touched him. Austin Reeves didn't think he touched him, so. But whatever, I just wanted to get that joke.
I don't know. No, I actually, this is like actually like it's one of those situations where I don't know, because if he, I mean, you hoop all the time still. Like, if somebody touches your arm, you shoot it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but it was pretty crazy that Jaylen was so adamant because I think in his mind he didn't touch him or it didn't affect the play. And for a rookie, I mean, a rookie got a challenge, which you don't normally see. And I think right away when, who was it, Jeff Newton or whatever, he looked at Finch and he's like, I don't know if we should have done that. And Finch kind of like rolled his eyes. Whatever, good for Jaylen. And then also, too, I don't think we can talk about one side of this without at least touching on the other side of it is finally, and you said Naz Reid, which I think is so interesting because you can Twitter search this, and I might even, but they didn't have to trade Naz Reid for Bones Hyland. They just got Bones Hyland. We did it, baby. So Bones Hyland is also Jaylen now is eligible for the playoffs, which I think is a big part about that contract thing. So like Jaylen is not only in the rotation for maybe this year and next year, but in the playoffs. So big nugget there. Bones Hyland, what did he sign? I don't actually get it. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's just a two-way contract, and I think the deadline to be able to sign a two-way contract is like March 1st or something like that. So you got to bring him in. I remember when like PJ Dozier signed. It was like with the G League team a year before he ended up signing this contract this year. I think it's kind of that same idea, specifically because PJ Dozier played in Denver for Tim Connolly. Obviously, Bones Hyland played in Denver for Tim Connolly. I think it's the idea that like, okay, here's a look at a guy that Tim has a standing relationship with. Obviously, nobody in the world is higher on Bones Hyland than Tim Connolly. But if I am Tim Connolly and I'm higher on Bones Hyland than anybody else in the world, well, okay, yeah, play him the rest of the G League season here, and see what you got. A season from now, they're going to need to be filling this roster up with minimum contracts, right? Maybe Bones Hyland's a minimum contract guy a season from now. You would want that to get in the way of Rob Dillingham or anything like that. But who knows, man? Who knows there's a world where this team could use a functional backup point guard come July, and now they have a better idea if that's maybe Bones Hyland or not. But I don't view it as any. Tim Connolly likes Rob Dillingham just as much as he loves Bones Hyland. I don't think it's like you don't gotta worry about that. This is since I've covered Tim Connolly at every single like transaction window, trade deadline, off season, whatever, I've heard like, oh, Tim's inquiring about Bones, like when he was on the Clippers and stuff like that. And now he got him for nothing, like literally nothing. So it is what it is. Maybe has a small chance at an upside down the line of becoming a functional, maybe not rotation piece, but end of the roster piece on a minimum contract and a team that's going to need minimum contracts down the line. Like that's all I make of it.
But he's a bigger name than some of the other random shams grenades you see of like some guy that signs a 10-day. So I think some people, I was thinking my dad would think, oh, he's not gonna, like, there's no chance he's in this rotation this year. So it's more of kind of a long-term play. Like the world would have to really fall on its ass for Bones Hyland to be playing for the Timberwolves at any point this season. But it is like a long-term play, and it does open my eyes to maybe Tyler Lydon still has a chance to come to Minnesota because Tim just brings all his favorite players. By the way, Tyler Lydon, I was on a rabbit hole. I didn't know that he was part of the Donovan Mitchell trade. Anyway, it's just a cool move. It's a cool move for Jaylen. It's a nice step in the right direction for what this team is going to have to figure out this summer with massive roster building things. But to have Jaylen figured out, and then a lottery ticket with a Bones and what you do down the road. It's a micro transaction, right? But those micro transactions sometimes lead to bigger, major moves or just major success. So shout out to Jaylen. I thought that was a really cool moment. And shout out to Tim Connolly, who, again, for a team that is depleted on the assets, continues to find. I mean, we did a whole podcast now basically about Terrence Shannon Jr., Jaylen Clark. I mean, what they'll do with Rob. So they got a lot of good young guys. They just got to figure out the right time to incorporate them into what is now likely a team on the rise in terms of health, but not a team on the rise in terms of maybe on the court performance, having dropped a handful of games over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, let's just close this off by like recapping the week.
Okay.
I mean, would like to at least get some of your thoughts on the Oklahoma City game, but I was just like kind of sitting there, putting this together, being like, but it just kind of struck me that it's only been 1 week since the All-Star break. We recorded last Saturday after the Wolves loss to Houston on Friday. On Sunday night, they play the front end of that crazy OKC back-to-back. And put down in my notes, it's like, oh yeah, remember, like, I was surprised by Gobert not playing in that game. Thinking back to Sunday, even the first OKC game. Okay, he like mysteriously remains out. They had the crazy back-to-back 20 hours later, whatever, land in OKC, play that game with the crazy comeback. On the off day, they sign Jaylen Clark, Bones Hyland for the Lakers game. Dante DiVincenzo returns to practice. He plays in the game last night, making a return before both Randle and Gobert. Like, I don't know what the odds would have been on that if we would have placed those at the All-Star break. That's a surprise. And then DiVincenzo plays in that Lakers game. The Wolves lose, don't look good in it. Ant gets ejected and gets suspended for the next game. I mean, that's a packed week there, man. Like, that was a lot. A lot happened this week. It's kind of felt like I don't know, never ran a marathon before, but what I would imagine like the last mile of a marathon feels like, where you're just like, okay, we're going through this. I need water to recharge and figure out what I'm going to be once this race is over. They need their guys back, but this was exasperating and exhausting sort of week for the Wolves, but a lot happened. I mean, pick anything. I mean, we've touched on a lot of that, but pick anything from there that stood out to you.
I am going to answer your week in review by just kind of also looking slightly ahead as we turn the page to March. But love when you take a shot at an analogy. So I love the marathon thing. I think of I do Orange Theory, and they have this Orange Everest thing where basically you run at a treadmill and you go all the way up 1% at a time to 15 incline, and then on the way down you go down by 2, and it's like running up a mountain. And to me, coming out of the All-Star break this last week and a half, it was like incline 13, 14, and 15 to get to the final top. Because if you do look at their schedule now, and this ties into just having played the Thunder and the Rockets and the Lakers, they play 2 good teams in March. In the month of March, that has a bunch of games, like every other night. They play the Pacers and they play the Nuggets. But their schedule is coming down the incline. But that is, when I run it, the hardest part is trying to balance, like, do I start sprinting? How do I start handling this? So their schedule now is, I think, the second easiest remaining schedule in the league. But it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. So how are you going to respond to that? And I thought, the Thunder win was, I mean, you've done great pods this week. I thought the Thunder win was the most memorable, fun moment because to me it was like the epitome of a gap year of just letting the young kids run around at the dog park. But it was also necessary because you drop a Rockets game, you should win. And you probably drop, you kind of get punked at home by the Thunder, and then you drop this Lakers game where you had no fight. So all of the good teams, in my opinion, are kind of behind them, other than maybe a Nuggets here or there. You have this ability over the final 22 games to put everything behind you, including, like, last night, flip the page to March and be like, hey, can we go on a 15-7 run? Because I think if you go on a 15-7 run, you can get yourself out of the play-in. And that, to me, has to be officials, draft picks, player option, whatever. The sole focus for this next 6 weeks has to be getting out of the play-in. Not only because it's a risky proposition of playing 1 or 2 games, but I remember last year, despite losing game 82, how much every player and coach told us that week allowed them to game plan and figure shit out and rest and not get technical fouls. They need to get into that top 6. And if they don't do it, results aside, I think it's a disappointing season. And I know some people are already at that level, but I think if they can get into the top 6, secure real playoff games, obviously they'd have to be on the road, which they might be better at. That would make the season kind of a win, and then you go from there. But I know you wanted me to talk about the past. The past to me is just over now, and it's perfect.
Sure.
Today's the last day of February, move to March, play the right guys, stop talking to the officials, and just try to go on a run because, and I'm biased, and this is where the homerism comes in, but I do think they can kind of beat anyone. But I don't think they can just show up and be like, yeah, we can beat anyone. I think they need...
But that's why the 6th seed matters, right? is like,
for sure, because
getting to that opportunity, because I do agree with that. If it is like the Rockets or whatever,
or the Grizzlies,
6-3 or the like. So I was gonna just ask you that, like, off the cuff, of if they go 15-7, like you said, and that's good enough to get them to 6. Do you have a preferred team that for them to play in the 6-3? If like,
I'll tell you this is such a loser mentality, Kyle. You're a loser. I don't want to be the Lakers because
No,
I just
I
don't.
agree.
I don't
I
think
agree,
they
man.
match up well, even though they have all these. I mean, the Lakers are big, and I joke with you all the time. Like the Wolves are kind of low key small if they play the way that I like them to play. And then I just think you have a team that might be the most hated in the league by the officials, and maybe the team that's the most beloved, and you have no chance in that series. I don't worry about the Rockets because I think they're fun and they play really tough and they're so well coached, but I still come down to, I know the clutch time thing is totally throwing me off here, but they don't have that guy. And I want to see the Rockets do it in the playoffs. Just like when the Wolves were really good with their defense last year, everyone's like, do it in the playoffs. I want to see the Rockets do it in the playoffs. And then also, too, the Grizzlies, what better chance to kind of right your wrongs than that's when the Wolves really came onto the scene, was that playoff series against the Grizzlies. So if it's Memphis, if it's Houston, I think the Wolves match up really well against those two teams. If it's the Lakers, I don't. Obviously, like a Clippers matchup, not concerned. And then OKC is still
Denver. Yeah,
And then
Denver would be the
Denver
other.
would
Denver's
be-
a 3 right now. Yeah,
Denver would be a fun. You forget that 5-game series with Nas being out and Jaden punching the wall. Like it wasn't just last year that the Wolves and Nuggets had some heat. Like they kind of have a budding rivalry, even though the Nuggets have actually won something. So, yeah, I just think outside of LA, there's no team that I'd be super concerned about. And I think that's how they feel too. But that's how they should feel fearless on April 15th when they would know their playoff matchup. I don't think they should be walking into arenas starting tonight against Utah being like, we can beat anybody. Because I think that mentality has hurt them more than it's helped them.
yeah. They're gonna still get Denver 2 more times this season, both in Denver. Interested to see those games to have a better take on what that would be. As of right now, I would put Denver in the LA Lakers bin of like, those
fair.
are not, if I were the Wolves, those are the ones I wouldn't want to get. And obviously the Wolves had a good game plan that worked against Jokic and Denver a season ago. I don't think we can just assume that they'll be able to click back into that and it will be effective with Nas or Julius guarding Jokic and Gobert off of him. Like, I think in that series, my concern is still Jokic, and if they can't find that gear defensively where they have a way in which to limit Jokic through putting 2 on him, I am concerned about Rudy just guarding Jokic. And, because it wasn't the whole series where they had Cat on Jokic and Rudy lurking there. It was that game where Rudy had the master class, or not Rudy, that Jokic did with a 40, the insane game. That was just all on Rudy's head, as was when Jokic played the Jazz back in like the bubble in the playoffs previously. That I do not have confidence in Rudy's ability to reasonably like slow that matchup by himself. So that's until I feel confident about a counter way of the Wolves being able to guard Jokic with this roster construction, I'm putting them. They're in the OKC bin to me.
That's totally fair, and I think that was actually more appropriate. But I just want to hammer this home as we close and turn down the lights for the week. This isn't like they're playing in March bad teams. Dude, they are playing like the worst teams. Like the Sixers without Embiid, the Hornets without LaMelo, like the Spurs. Like they have so many really, really bad teams coming up that are now kind of, as we switch into March Madness and bracket season, purposely tanking. Like you're going to hear Cooper Flagg's name a lot more in March than you did in February. They are going to play the worst of the worst teams that have, organizationally no desire to win, but they're still going to play guys kind of like the Wolves did against OKC that are young and hungry and want to prove themselves. And if they were, I said 15-7, if they go 11-11 over the final 22, that is a disaster class. Like their schedule is not built for 11-11. It is built for winning a bunch of games to then get to your, really smart idea of who do you match up well in a first round playoff series. Because right now, today, if it ended, you're playing OKC as the 8-1 matchup, and that, I know they just beat them, but that's not, you don't want that. I don't think they, so it's going to be an interesting final 5 or 6 weeks. Who plays, who doesn't play, how do they play? And it does start tonight, to circle it all the way back to the first minute, against a Utah team that doesn't really want to win, still has good players, and you're without your best player. So how will you respond?
Yeah, I watched some Utah this week. I mean, it's a team deficient on like talent for sure, right? It's one of the worst.
So well coached.
Yeah, it's just like they're functional. They're functional. Yeah. It is like, why don't they get the Wizards like a couple? I know the Wizards are beating them, but you know, like the Wizards are just like young chaos, and like so in those games you're just like, you know, trying to avoid somebody getting hot or them catching a rhythm. Like Utah will play like functional basketball. Filipowski will be flinging it around, and Markkanen's playing, you know, tonight. It's not a good team by any means, but it's like I do not think it's just like could walk in there and coast on a back-to-back without Ant and Randle and Gobert and be like, yeah, this is, you know, they're gonna have to play like decently well tonight to be able to win it.
7 of their final 22 games are against teams above 500. That's how I came up with 15-7. So
which
15,
makes, yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Then the 6th seed is they're one behind the Clippers right now, like one game. Well, I guess 2 in the loss column behind the Clippers. You know, it's if they're able to take advantage of it, getting to the 6, or maybe some like Houston fall off or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now they're 6 in the loss column behind Houston, 7 behind LA in the loss column. So yeah, it's probably the 6 is probably the top end of where they could finish in the standings, barring something crazy. But the 6 is very possible, and I think that's not only a realistic goal. I think that should be like the expectation of the team. Like I think it will not be meeting expectations if even for just this final 4th quarter of the season, as you said, if they don't get the 6th seed. I think that's the level they should be, you know, held to. And yeah, like you said, starts tonight. We'll see how that goes. You got anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, just really quickly, because you know everyone else that comes on this is actually a journalist and good at stuff, and they promote and plug their work. I have nothing to plug, but you know what I'm going through behind the scenes and stuff. I just want to say that if you're someone, I know we have a lot of people listening to this of all ages, and a lot of people have kids, and that is a full-time job in and of itself. But I really wanted to say this quick. If you find yourself this spring wanting to get out of the house more, you have free time or whatever, you're just looking for a way to make yourself feel better, give back, check out your local, wherever you're living, your Special Olympics organization. I've been doing a lot of that out here with Oregon, coaching basketball, coaching soccer, and the athletes are awesome, and they make you feel like you have another purpose in life, and they are so competitive. I mean, they watch the same games that we do. Like they want to replicate what Ant does, and they're all such great human beings, and they need more volunteers. And if you're looking for a way to kind of, as the snow melts, get out of the house or just give back or whatever, and you got some time, go check out whatever state, city you're living in, the Special Olympics website, because it's a really, really great organization, and it makes a difference. And I just think that's really big right now. It's trying to make a difference. So shout out to the Special Olympics.
Love that, man. No, that is, and I know you spend a lot of time doing it, and you'll often be like, all right, I'm annoyed by this, but I'm going to go, and I'm annoyed by my work day here, but now I'm going to go do this to get away. Like you would like. Yeah, that's a really, yeah, I think that's a great thing for you to plug there. All right, we don't have anything else. I think we hit everything. Coming up next there's the Utah game on Friday, and then they play Phoenix on Sunday. We won't have any episodes this weekend, but Jason and I will record on Monday morning, and we will be talking about both of those games, probably focusing a little bit more on the Phoenix game. So yeah, still the 4th quarter of the season to come, and we will be here to talk about it. You guys can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Yeah, till Monday with JC's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.